When I discuss purpose, I think that there's an opportunity for us to understand what that actually really means in the realm of a day to day experience and how to identify where we're cutting off track versus when we're really super on track. And I want to talk about this because when you're having symptoms like anxiety in the workplace, when it's popping up and let's just say it kind of starts on Sunday. One of the funny little underlying symptoms that a lot of people completely miss is you can't take a deep cleansing breath. You try to take a deep breath and it stops short. That's a really big symptom and sign that there's a lot of contraction in your body. And when there's a lot of contraction in your body, that's a bit of a sign or symptom of anxiety. And I think there's like signs and symptoms that we ignore a lot because we don't really want to say the word anxiety. We don't want to really show that we're feeling stressed or out of line. We don't want to really showcase that we might not be able to handle that big job that we just got. So let's just say you just got an executive director position or a director position or a vice president or your chief this or executive vice president that. And you don't want to look like you can't handle it. And so it's hard to label these things and admit these things because we don't want to show that we're weak, especially as women. I'm sure, especially as men too, now that I say that out loud. But we don't want to showcase that we don't know what we're doing or we can't handle it. But I want to point out more of these kind of symptoms because I want to point you in a direction that shows you it's not normal, for one, and for two, what to do about it, right? And what does it even mean? And I caveat these conversations when I talk about things like anxiety, depression, migraines, etc. Because I'm obviously not, I'm not a neuro person. I'm not a neuro doctor. I don't have a PhD or an MD in any of this stuff. I just have a lived experience of when I was climbing the corporate ladder and the symptoms that I started feeling and seeing that were piling up that sort of culminated into this rock bottom. And it was a moment where I just really couldn't ignore these things anymore. And I am trying really hard to share more symptoms that I experienced just out of sheer awareness and not to put aside other things that create anxiety because there's lots of things that create anxiety, but just to highlight what they are and what they feel like so we can identify them and we can start dealing with them. And so for me, one of the symptoms that I would have is that tightness in my body. And so I could literally not take a cleansing breath, is what I call it. It's like that really full, deep breath. I would stop short and feel like I could not take in full lung air. And so that's one thing. And that's one way of realizing that there might be something starting to brew or have been brewing for a while. The other thing that could happen is if you're in a meeting and you start feeling like your palms start sweating or getting cold, or even like a little bit of like kind of a lightheaded feeling almost like a feeling like you're afraid to pass out. That was one thing that would happen to me. And I got to the point where I would try to distract myself. I would try to change the direction of my brain with pinching my leg. I would literally try to cause some other feeling in my body to avoid that stress that was building and I could feel it and the anxiety that was starting to brew into a panic attack. And so your palms might start getting sweaty, you might start feeling kind of cold or your palms like that cold sweat clamminess. Or if you're trying to really avoid the physical symptom or experience, you might try to distract yourself by creating a different feeling like pinching your leg or something like that. And I really want to talk about that one because I was hiding it and I'm sure other people do too. And I want to bring attention to it because I want to just say this is not the way that is normal. And I think people have it a lot and don't talk about it. And so that's one. Another one is feeling very emotional or very aggressive towards somebody when they say something to you. And I think a streamlined or mainstream word that people are using these days when we talk about this kind of stuff is feeling triggered. So if you're feeling triggered, if you're in a meeting and someone really pisses you off, and you go to the stratosphere about it and you get so mad. And there's different types of people, right? There's times where you might hold that in and put your head down and passive aggressive and say, nope, it's fine. Let's move on. Or you might experience this anger with an outburst and you might just tell somebody off or say something to them. Didn't you hear what I was saying? Or something along the lines of, I don't like what how this is going, or you just pop off. This anger, this stress builds up, and then you say something, and then what happens? You have a wicked hangover about it, don't you? You feel bad, you feel ashamed, you feel embarrassed, you call your friends. Did that sound that bad? Did I sound like a fool? Did I go off the deep end? And you try to pull yourself back off the cliff because you've really just felt like you went off it. And so that can be something that happens when you're out of alignment with who you are as a person, or out of alignment with your purpose, or out of alignment just generally speaking. This can also be sort of a symptom of not having the stability within yourself and wanting the conscious approval outside of yourself, or reaching for that outside approval. So that can also be something that's triggering all this. But nonetheless, I want to pull it forward because I think it's definitely something that can happen where people experience it and think maybe it's normal, and but really not sure what to do about it because it doesn't really feel good. Another big thing that can happen, especially in the work world, where you can experience being really out of alignment, is a rumination of something that you did or something that you said, and you're just ruminating it and replaying it over and over and over and over in your mind, and you're wishing you said this, and you're wishing you did that, or wish you didn't say this, or wish you didn't do that. And that rumination can be really, really unhealthy, and it can really, really force you into acting a certain way that you wouldn't normally act, whether that's at home or at work. So that's another big one. Another way that you can look at and see, am I really wildly out of alignment, is when you are trying to control things that feel very out of control. Maybe you're doing a lot of Googling of how do I control my calendar? How do I not have so many meetings in a day? How do I figure out how to answer emails when I'm on 10 calls a day? So that's another sign that things are just a little out of whack and out of control. And I want to bring all these things up because when it comes to the topic of purpose, one of the biggest components is living in such a way that feels aligned and not forced. And where we're having these sort of physical reactions or emotional reactions, these are all signs that we're really out of whack. And if we're out of whack, then it's something to pay attention to. And the question becomes, well, what do I do about that? And I want to talk about some tactical things that you can do in order to alleviate some of these symptoms that you're having because you're out of alignment. And I know I talk a lot about fulfilling your soul's desires and that being your purpose in life, but a lot of people don't know what that means. And certainly when we have these kind of symptoms going on, these are much more acute and make us say, I don't really give a crap about purpose right now. What I need to know is how to not have friggin' anxiety come Sunday at 4 p.m. and start freaking out because I'm looking at my calendar and trying to prepare for my week and see that I've got a bajillion meetings, and now I feel really stressed out and I can't take a cleansing breath. So I want to talk a little bit about what to think about and what might help you through those experiences and scenarios, in hopes that you have less of them and you have a little bit more alignment with yourself so that you cannot feel those things so much, and that you can start settling in to have a more anchored feeling instead of these external things that are really causing a lot of strain and stress and problems in your life. And one of the things that helped me a lot to be grounded and get some of that angst out of my body is exercise. And I know I'm not an exercise expert by any means. I'm not a health and wellness coach, although I have my health and wellness coach certification. I'm not necessarily someone who coaches people on how to exercise or what to do, etc. But if you're not moving your body and getting some of that release of all that tension and all that anxiety and all that stress, at the end of the day, there are people in this world, I was one of them previously, there are people in this world that have high pressure jobs, whether that's a physically high pressure job, emotionally high pressure job, mentally high pressure job, or all of the above combined. And I am not going to sit here and say that you're never going to feel anxious, that you're always going to feel relaxed. The fact of the matter is, if you're really doing what your soul wants to do and having that high powered, high stress, high strain, high pressure job, and that makes you happy, but you have some of these symptoms going on and you're not exercising, there's a really, really good chance that you're missing a big component of taking care of this container that you're in. And the container that you're in is life, but you exist in this container as your higher self, your mind, your body, and your soul. And your higher self's job is to consistently understand what each one of those components needs in order to function at a higher level in the job or the relationship or the environment that you're in. And if you're not sort of taking care of those three things that make up you, then you'll find yourself, even though you're like, but I love problem solving and I love being in charge of things, but I have all this stress and all this anxiety. And so it's really important to understand that if you want to continue doing that work, that's wonderful and that's beautiful. But if you're not taking care of the components, then your machine's going to shut down. It's no different than if you literally, one of the biggest components of making a car work properly is oil, and you just let the oil run out and you never fill the oil back up and you never change the oil, then your car is going to start shutting down. So if you look at it like, I have this really high functioning, high pressure, high expectation job, and you really enjoy it and your soul's loving life that in that environment, but you're having some of these symptoms that don't really say, I'm really enjoying this. I want to point out something to do in each one of those components, mind, body, soul, so that you can start really executing on these things to see if it makes you feel better, see if you can get a little more settled into what you're doing so that you can continue to do your purpose, which is fulfill your soul's desires. And if your soul really wants to be a high level, high executive, high performing, high athlete, whatever it is, then you have to take care of the components or they'll shut down. So from a body standpoint, if you're not exercising, obviously if you're an athlete, you might be exercising too more. Everything's a balance, but too much is it. So from a high performance standpoint and trying to alleviate some of these symptoms that showcase that you're out of whack or out of offline or out of base, body wise, you really, really do need to ensure that you're exercising and getting that movement. And if there's a lot of stress that day, letting it release, getting it out of your body. And a lot of people, when they talk about releasing, in fact, some people really see a high value in literally screaming or screaming into a pillow or throwing something. And that's okay. That's not a bad thing. In fact, I think that's really healthy to get it out because if you're in a role like that, you're going to experience high pressure situations that are really stressful. And if you don't get that stress out of your body, it builds up and wreaks havoc. So that's one part. If you're having these symptoms I discussed earlier, like anxiety, stress, sleepless nights, migraines, headaches, tension in your shoulders, etc., back pain, low back pain, and you want to not feel those things, but you want to continue doing the work that you're doing or being in the relationship that you're in or whatever part we're talking about in your life, and you're taking care of your body by moving it, and then you move on to taking care of your mind or your soul. We'll start with the mind first. So when we think about taking care of the mind, you really have to understand what the mind's function is. It's really important to understand its role, and its role is to keep you safe. And so if you're doing anything that's different or it's a change, your mind will literally send stress signals to your body. So there's a lot of work that you need to do with the mind in letting it do what it does, which is keep you safe and survive and alive, but then also making sure that you're training it to do what you want it to do. Because if you don't train it, it gets way on the aggressive side of keeping you safe, and then it'll really start getting aggressive and trying to shut you down from doing things that you really want to do because it's different or it's a change, and then you end up feeling all these symptoms because it's sending the stress signals to your body to stop, or hey, create some anxiety because maybe that'll make this person stop doing this change or this different thing that I want it to do. So you really have to understand the role of the mind is foundationally to survive and keep you safe and keep you alive. And so you're going to almost have to anticipate its freak out or its panic when you're doing something that's hard, challenging, different, a change, facing adversity with a colleague or with somebody in a relationship, and talking through the mind what its role is and letting it have its fit. And after its fit is done, being like, hey, listen, really appreciate that you are trying to keep me safe, keep me alive, allow me to survive in this life. But I need you to hold tight until I give you a proper action to do. And therefore, just sit tight. So, the solution to get your mind on board with what you're trying to accomplish is literally talking through with it what you need from it and training it so that when things do come along that are different, hard, it's sort of in the ready position and able to execute accordingly without freaking out. So, safety is really important to the mind. So, keeping an understanding of that is important in this equation so that you can ensure that the mind is on board when you say, hey, it's okay. I understand why you're throwing a fit and I get it, but I need you to calm down for a second. I need you to hold tight and I will give you action and you can solve a problem here shortly, but just hold tight. We're figuring this out. So, it's a consistent state of talking to yourself, honestly. I know it sounds kind of silly, but it's how it works. And then the third component is soul. And I really love this part because if your soul is being expressed in emotions, and that's how I describe it, you can hear your soul through emotions. And if there's emotion like scary or fear, then you can have a big part in helping it feel better. And so similar to the mind, there's a lot of conversation that has to go on between you and yourself, and your soul, your higher self has to look at it and go, I know what's needed here because my emotions are high and I know my soul is speaking to me through my emotions. So I'm going to take some proactive approaches here and help it feel more comfortable and safe. And that is making sure you love yourself. Your soul is you. If you aren't consistently making sure your soul feels safe via love, then you're really going to feel these experiences that are not pleasant. So it's really important to do that. And when they all come together, this is what allows you to move forward and perform at a high level and alleviate some of those symptoms that you're feeling from the stress or the pressure of a big job, a big project, etc. So I hope this helps. And it was just a quick rundown of how I see addressing some of these symptoms you might be experiencing from high pressure, high level, high big decisions, big projects, and getting them done. So let me know what you guys think about that. Let me know if that helps. Let me know if there's any other symptoms that are coming up for you too in these, especially world of work, right? But they can come up in relationships too. And try some of these ways of making the mind, body, soul come together and work as a unit to get you to a place where you're alleviating some of those symptoms that we talked about. And that's it for now, guys. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Have a good one.